So we're here in Manitou today. I wanted to give you guys just a quick tour, quick kind of overview so you can kind of see if this is a spot that you want to check out or if you'd want to move here yourself. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do some walking around so you can kind of see what it feels like, get some good drone shots for you so you can get really a good feel for the entire area.
If you're thinking about moving to Colorado Springs and you want a bit more of a mountain town feel, Manitou Springs is a solid option. But it's super hard to get a feel without actually being there, and so today I want to take you on a little tour. If you're new here, my name is Ben, and in this channel we make videos for you about what it's like to live and move to Colorado Springs. Having grown up in Colorado Springs, spent a ton of time just kind of getting a scope of everything and really want to share with you exactly what it feels like to live here. Also, we are a team of realtors and would love to earn your business. So give us a call or a text, we'd love to hear from you. And then once you reach out, we can go ahead and set up a phone call or a Zoom call. That way we can kind of get a sense on where you're at and how we can help. But let's get straight into it. Welcome to Manitou. So Manitou Springs is located to the west of downtown Colorado Springs, right near the foothills of the mountains before you get to Pikes Peak. And although it's technically not Colorado Springs, it is part of the whole metro area and is a solid option if you're considering moving to Colorado Springs. So Manitou is a small town. You may notice me kind of switching back from Manitou Springs to Manitou. I feel like everyone locally just calls it Manitou. Technically it is Manitou Springs. But yeah, Manitou is a small town. You got 5,000 residents. And the general vibe of Manitou is gonna be a little bit more laid back, a little bit of a hippie new age feel to it. But then you also have a lot of like sports enthusiasts with the trail to Pikes Peak, Bar Trail, being located in Manitou, and the Manitou Incline, which we'll cover both of those in just a second. So Manitou is gonna be just slightly older demographic wise than the rest of Colorado Springs by a couple of years. So Manitou sits at around an average age of 44 versus Colorado Springs is gonna be closer to 37. Now you don't really feel this there just because of that slight kind of air of almost it being like a little hippie town. So I was kind of actually surprised when I was doing some research for this video with that being the case. And whenever my wife and I go to Manitou, whether it's on a date or just to hang out, I feel like we always see something kind of quirky. And it's more so quirky in like an endearing way that's just super unique. So like back in, I think it was like January or February, we were out and saw this giant like float, but it was like a caricature of, I believe, a local artist that they had blown up into float format, and it was very quirky, but I don't know, I feel like that's just a good representation of every time we go into Manitou, I feel like there's something kind of unique to see, but it's kind of endearing. So I feel like there's like just generally three types of people in Manitou. So you kind of have like your hippie new age people, you have your sports enthusiasts, and then you have your people that just want to be closer to the mountains. So Manitou though does have a little bit more of a small town feel, but you are located within kind of the urban stretch of Colorado Springs. So I'd say that the urban kind of stretch of Colorado Springs is Manitou Springs, Old Colorado City, and downtown, and because of that you are going to have a little bit more of an uptick of homeless people. However, Manitou specifically doesn't have any homeless shelters, and so I feel like a lot of the homeless population ends up being a little bit closer to downtown and parts of Old Colorado City. So in terms of things to do in Manitou, you have quite a few options, and Manitou is going to be pretty touristy in general. Sometimes it does feel like every 10th shop is like a t-shirt shop selling Manitou Springs and Pikes Peak t-shirts. But that being said, there are some really cool options in terms of things to check out. So some of our favorites are Manitou Brewing, has a really cool like entryway and kind of just atmosphere there, really good food and beer as well. Then you have Rocky Mountain beignets. So if you've never tried a beignet, they're essentially a donut that had its origins in France, and they're super good. Met the owners of this shop who are from Louisiana, where my wife's whole family was from, so it's kind of a cool connection. We always stop by here when we're in Manitou. And then in terms of some of the restaurants that are highly rated, you've got like Manitou Baked, which is a pizza place, kind of fitting just for Colorado in general. And then you got El Taco Loco, places like Otis's Barbecue, and a bunch of others. If you're a local watching this video, let us know in the comments what your favorite restaurants are in Manitou. And then aside from food, you've also got things like the Manitou Penny Arcade. So the Manitou Penny Arcade is essentially a bunch of different vintage arcade games that you can play. And then also you have 8 different mineral springs within Old Colorado City that are like naturally formed, that they've kind of funneled into fountain forms, and they each have like different mineral content. And my father-in-law, who was here for the 4th of July visiting, who has a channel, we made a video on it, just sampling the different mineral waters, so check that out if you're interested. Here's a kind of quick glimpse of us trying those. So if you are into outdoor activities, hiking, running, biking, you've got quite a few good options as well. So you've got the Manitou Incline, which essentially is a mile straight staircase that used to be old railroad ties. So it's about 2,000 feet of elevation gain straight up. It's like between 40 and at its steepest 68% grade. So yeah, it's literally almost straight up. So originally the railroad ties were part of a rail system to transport material to a nearby hydroelectric plant and to a water line on Pikes Peak. But since then they've updated it and it's purely now just for recreational purposes. So I got some shots of the incline, but my drone was being a little weird that day, and so very unaesthetically, I didn't even pan it to the top of the incline, but here's a little footage just so you can kind of get a general idea. And then you've also got the infamous or famous bar trail that leads to the top of Pikes Peak. So bar trail is about 13 miles long and is actually the path for the Pikes Peak Marathon and the Ascent. So each year they have a marathon that goes up and down Pikes Peak starting in Manitou. And they also have the Ascent, which is just the up portion of that. So my father-in-law, when he was visiting, was mentioning he had done bar trail up to the top of Pikes Peak once or twice, and when he was doing it, he felt like he always saw people just like running up and down from tree line to the top. And that kind of, I think, just speaks to like these sports enthusiast people who either live in Manitou or flock to Manitou for almost like training because of that. So if you don't want to hike or run to the top of Pikes Peak, you do have 2 other options. So you have the Cog Railway, which is a train that takes you from Manitou all the way up to the top of Pikes Peak. So the Cog Railway, it's around $60 a ticket and takes about 3 hours in total. So it's an hour up, you stay there for about an hour, and then the way back down is about an hour. So that is probably the easiest way to get up to Pikes Peak, but it's gonna be just slightly more expensive. You can also, though, drive up to the top of Pikes Peak. So they've since revamped the way that this works. So when my in-laws were visiting, we actually all went, my wife and I and my in-laws, up to the top driving. And the way that kind of works now is essentially you reserve a time slot and pay your entry fee, which is $15 a person or $50 a car. So there was 4 of us. So we ended up just paying $50 for the car and had a 2-hour or 3-hour window in which we had to arrive at the start kind of entry gate. And then we had as much time as we wanted driving up and staying at the top and driving down. So it can be a little bit sketchy driving up but they have updated it so that there's more guardrails and the road is fairly well paved. So it helps now. Portions of it actually used to be just dirt, and so that made it a whole lot more sketchy. You can technically take a bus up to the top of Pikes Peak too, but I don't know, personally seeing those buses go around those corners and near close to the edge, it's a little sketchy. So personally, I don't know if I'd want to do that, but you do have that option, and I think it's technically the cheapest. And another kind of thing to note too, they're gonna tell you on the way down that you're supposed to downshift into a lower gear and essentially kind of just ease on the brake. Pump the brake, because if you ride your brakes the entire time, they can harden up and you can basically lose your brakes. So do know, if you are going and you're going to drive it, they are going to tell you this, don't be scared. They'll even check your brakes with a thermal temperature gauge halfway down. So visiting Pikes Peak, it's open from May 1st to November 30th. And with the new visitor center at the top, I guess it's maybe not brand new, but it's about 4 years old now. But yeah, the new visitor center was really well done and makes things a little bit easier now, especially with more people kind of flocking to the area to see the top of Pikes Peak. So when we went in July, it was pretty busy. It felt like they could have expanded the visitor center to be even bigger, but now at least you don't have just a tiny little basically shack on the top of Pikes Peak. And sadly, I was gonna get some really cool footage for you guys with the drone, but they don't actually allow drones up there, and so got a time-lapse video so you can kind of check out what the drive is like. Also, really quick, if you're getting any value out of this video, go ahead and subscribe so you can follow along. So a couple things to note. The altitude change, especially driving, because it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to get to the top. It's a pretty stark change, even from just Manitou up to the top. And me being a local, having been very well adjusted, still felt a little bit woozy at the top. So if you are visiting, make sure you do this last so you're well adjusted. And know when you get to the top, it's gonna take just a little bit to get almost settled in. So know if you feel funny, it will kind of ease, you'll start to feel better. But yeah, we were all a little disoriented getting to the top, and even us as locals still took some time to get used to.
At this altitude, I think our bodies are already beginning to die.
And do know if you are going mid-July, kind of the peak tourist season, it is going to be pretty packed. So if you're considering Manitou to live in and you're thinking about buying a house here, most of the homes are going to be almost built into the side of the mountain. It's not like there's a ton of like neighborhoods per se with like gated entries and stuff like that. It's pretty much just like a hodgepodge of houses. Most of them are going to be older houses that were built in the like early 1900s to mid 1900s. And honestly, it's super impressive, like the way that people were able to get and transport material up to the building sites here. Like, it's crazy. But average price point in Manitou is gonna be a little bit more expensive than Colorado Springs as a whole. So average price point to buy a house is gonna be closer to $550 versus Colorado Springs as a whole is gonna be closer to $470, $475. So do know you're gonna pay just a little bit more for being close to the mountains, and it's most likely gonna be a slightly older house. There are a couple neighborhoods here and there, but not that many. So school-wise, you're gonna be in District 14, and this might be important for just the long-term value of your house or if you have kids. And District 14 is kind of a mid-tier school district, so it's not quite as good as D20 to the north, or D12 to the kind of southwest. However, it is better than D11 directly to the east. I remember in high school playing soccer at the high school in Manitou, and the school there is really cool, just the way it's built on the side of the mountain. You have a great view throughout, have a lot of good memories playing different sports and competing at that high school. It wasn't the school I went to, but got to compete there a lot against Manitou. So that kind of does it for a quick tour of Manitou Springs. If you're thinking about moving to Colorado Springs, give us a call or a text, and we'll see you guys next time.